How does Alex fall into the cracks of like death metal?
What's that? Like
How did you fall in? How did you fall in
oh,
line with death metal?
how did I get into it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a very similar story to a lot of other people that are my age that were into metal
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s. Like, I started out with, Accept and Iron Maiden and stuff like that. Coming from liking rock as a kid, just like regular rock.
Yeah.
And and then yeah, getting into Accept, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, stuff like that. And then, hearing Metallica, especially, it's weird. I heard a couple early Metallica songs on I think it was either Metal Shop or Q107's Midnight Metal Hour. I grew up in Buffalo,
Mm-hmm.
as the other Cannibal guys were all from the Buffalo area. So we got two sets of radio stations. We'd get all the Buffalo ones and all the Toronto ones. And so the 97 Rock in Buffalo had Metal Shop, which was syndicated, and then they also did their own hour-long thing. And then Toronto had, yeah, Q107, and they had Midnight Metal Hour. So we listened to both of those. And this is like so old school that sometimes I'd have like one of those old cassette decks and like
Mm.
set it next to the stereo
Yeah.
to record
Yeah, yeah,
with a
yeah.
little condenser mic, just to get some of these things like and keep them and listen again because that was the only way really. So I remember hearing back on one of those old shows some Metallica songs, but they weren't the fast ones. I think that the guy on the radio show was like, "Oh, probably the fast stuff's going to be too much for my listeners." So
Yeah.
I heard "Fight Fire with Fire" at a scout camp. One of the other scouts knew, that I was into metal. He's like, "Hey, man, come here, check this out." He had a little radio in his tent, and he played me "Fight Fire with Fire."
Mm.
And I was like, "Holy crap! How are they even doing that?" Like, I couldn't, So that kind of fast guitar picking with that kind of saturation and muting, and just really even up and down picking to where it's James Hetfield's up and down picking on that song and on most of the stuff he does really is so consistent. And that level of saturation and palm muting was so new at that time that I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, how is he doing it? It sounds like all down picks, but
Yeah.
it's the speed of up and down picking. And it's a great song, really kind of a weird arrangement too. Like to this day, I would say that's kind of a hard song to learn to play, even
Yeah.
though it's 40 years old plus now, or yeah, just about 40 years old, I guess. So that I know that's not death metal, but that kind of led me. That was one of those moments that I remember.
Right. Well,
Like
it was
holy
like a
shit, this
trajectory. It like altered the
yeah,
trajectory a little bit.
absolutely. That was a big one. Like it, and I still love the old the old school heavy metal that I liked, it wasn't ever a thing where like all of a sudden those bands became obsolete.
Yeah.
I still listened to them too, but I was like, wow, this is really awesome. And I had heard Venom and a couple fast bands like that, but they weren't, I hadn't heard that kind of precision before
Mm.
with the picking and the performance and everything. So that was a big moment for sure. And that made me think that's what I want to play if I can, because of course it sounded just impossible.